Okay, well, I think let's get going. It's 2:05. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Federation for Detached Youth Work's webinar this afternoon. As I said before, we've had really good registration for this one. We've had 140 requests, and obviously 100 people hopefully will join us across the next hour and a half to 2 hours. Just going to do a little bit of housekeeping to get us going. We will be recording this webinar, both audio and visual, and we'll also be recording the chat space so that we can keep hold of that information and use any of that knowledge kind of moving forwards from the field about future webinars. You know, we'll be welcoming questions as well, and obviously down at the bottom of the screen there is a Q&A function. So if you could put questions into that box, then members of the Fed will be supporting that and feeding that back in as we go along. We obviously also welcome conversations and chats in the chat space, and like I said, that will be recorded too. Just want to let people know we're a charity entirely made up of volunteers, so periodically we will be putting a little post up there sort of signing you towards our website. If you'd like to donate, that would be lovely, so we can keep doing this stuff and keep providing this service for the field. But also, you know, that support, you know, that could be an offer of support in kind or to get connected to the charity too. Yeah, we're going to aim to end in about an hour and a half, and then we're going to keep the Zoom open up until 4 o'clock, and that space will be more about networking. And if you can hang out for a bit and continue the chats, then obviously we'd love you to do so. So yeah, your voices and your knowledge are really important to us, and we want to try and get as much of that kind of fed into these conversations as we move forward today. I just want to, we've got 4 speakers today. And they're going to kind of work in 15-minute slots. We're going to start with Leigh Middleton from the MYA, and then we're going to move into Katie Thompson from Young Advisors Streetbase project in Waltham Forest, and then Diane Higgins from Rochdale Youth Service, and then we will conclude with Chris McIntosh from YPAC in Manchester. So yeah, I don't want to say too much more, but I just want to give you maybe, I was asked to maybe do a little appraisal of myself and also of the charity. The charity's been going for 25 years now, and it's been there to support the field for all of that time. I got involved with the Federation about 5 years ago when I presented at a national conference about the work I was connected to in Manchester, and it's nice to see Chris today. We have some history from back in those days as well. I've been the chair now coming into my 3rd year, and I think it's a very important charity, and we're at a very important time for the field. We're trying to do as much work as we can on voluntary hours and build those networks and support the field as we move forward through COVID and the coming months. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to your involvement today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your voices, and I'm going to now pass over to Leigh to start us off. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Yep, my mic's on. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. We've been working with the Federation over the last few months around supporting the transition to detached youth work when lockdown kicked in and the world had to stop using facilities and youth centres and everyone was at home. There were 2 choices, which was either go online, which some youth provision has done so, but also we've also know a lot of young people have been out and about. So detached youth work has been an absolutely fundamentally important discipline within the youth sector. I was invited to talk as briefly as I can really about some developments that we've been working on with the UK government. I say the UK government, but it affects England only. So I've seen in the chat there's lots of colleagues here from Scotland and other places. What I'm about to say probably doesn't affect you in the same way, but you're very welcome to look at it in terms of constructive guidance. But we've been lobbying and pressing the government since right at the beginning, for about 9 weeks now, for youth workers to be categorised as key professionals within the sort of the response to COVID-19. There's been some areas around the country where that's been done locally, either by the local authority or the police. but we've not had that nationally. And then subsequently, we've been lobbying government and pressing them around guidance for the youth sector and what is permittable, what can we do, when can we do it, how can that be done safely and appropriately. And then about 2 weeks ago, the government asked the NYA, as the professional body for the youth work in England, to develop national guidance for the youth sector regarding what to do. Now we're starting to release the lockdown. So on Monday we'll be publishing this document. I'll wave it around at this point. This is the very only copy of it at the moment, and we've written detailed guidance to support the youth sector to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also how to open provision safely and securely and at the right point in time. This guidance has been endorsed literally in the last hour by Public Health England, the Health and Safety Executive, the Cabinet Office, Number 10, a whole ream of lawyers I'm not paying for, and a lot of other sort of governmental departments, Department for Education, Home Office, and the Department for Housing and Local Government. And so we know this stuff is quite good, and it's gone through a lot of rigour to get there, but we're very keen to get that out to the sector, and we will be launching it on Monday. Essentially, there are, just to talk you through the headlines of it, there is a readiness framework that's built into this, which has 4 levels. So red being the highest, and the red means the least that can take place, essentially, right the way down to amber, yellow and green. And at green, we would be back to relatively normal practice, and projects could have gone about their business as if there wasn't a pandemic around us. And at the different levels in there are different activities that are permittable within the youth sector. This is all driven by the legislation and the law. And so that guidance is provided around social distancing, cleaning, the use of facilities, looking after those with advanced risk from the coronavirus, looking at those that may have disadvantage or protected characteristics. We've talked about the Equality Act. We've been trying to talk about the sort of challenges that are in the media at the moment around BAME, but actually Public Health England are resistant to that because they see age as the largest risk factor. Ethnicity is definitely one, but it's not remotely high on their priority, and not priority, but on their list of challenges. So we keep pushing, and we'll see what we get through in the end. But that guidance will be out there from Monday. There's a video that we've commissioned as well, so an animated video to support the youth sector to grasp the core recommendations and the things you need to do. This guidance document for England is the rules. It is what you must do and should follow, and it will require all youth projects to develop a local action plan and risk assessments, which should be followed and amended and adapted as and when provision can change. So today, we would be in the red category. Groups can only meet outside and to a maximum of 6 individuals, and that would be within the law. But we do know that from hopefully around some point July onwards, the use of youth centres will reopen, and other facilities will be more available, and groups may be getting a bit bigger as well. It might be able to meet larger. And so as that guidance changes, we will update that on our website. So everybody will need to visit the NYA's webpage every Monday for the latest update on what is permittable that week. And we will change that as the rules and the law changes with the government. We get no advance notification. Even the civil servants working with us on this hear about what's happening as it happens on the 5 o'clock briefing at Number 10. So we're not likely to get any pre-advance notice, but this guidance document will be out there. It will apply to the whole of the youth sector. So uniform groups, scouts, the guides have signed up to this, as well as statutory services, local authorities, and beyond, the voluntary sector, the whole lot. So I just wanted to talk about it to raise your awareness that this is coming. And that it will be out there from Monday, and will be there to support the sector in making the right judgments about what is safe and what can and can't be done. I think in addition to that, I'm really grateful to colleagues from the Federation who worked with us to develop some specific guidance for detached youth work practice relating to COVID, and the current document, we'll talk about that. We'll also have a version that is not about COVID at some point, but for now, this is the world we're in, so we will be this is what we've provided, and that will be out by the end of the week. So we're aiming to publish that certainly by Friday, but there'll be some guidance around detached youth work practice within the COVID context, but that all fits in around the context of this national this national guidance document here. I'll stop there. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much, Leigh, and I appreciate you can try and stick around to maybe field some questions on that after the other speakers before you have to leave.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing that with everyone that's joined us today. I'm going to pass straight over to Katie, if that's okay. Are you ready to go and share your view from the streets where you're working, Katie?
Yep, 100%.
Great stuff, thank you.
Start my share screen. Can everyone see that okay? Perfect. Perfect. So hello everyone, I'm Katie as introduced. I am from Waltham Forest Council and I'll be speaking to you today about our peer-to-peer engagement Streetbase. So this is just a very beginning of how Streetbase started. It comes under our national charity, the Young Advisors. The Young Advisors is a charity that aims to get young people more active and involved in the local community. So different regions are set up in different ways. And we in Waltham Forest are set up under our council in the youth engagement team. So a little bit about me. I became a young advisor at the age of 12. I am now 23. Some may say I look 16, but I am actually 23. And Streetbase first came about in Southwark. So in 2009, Southwark Young Advisors started their peer-to-peer engagement program. And because it's been so successful over the past 10 years, we adopted it in Waltham Forest via the Young Londoners Fund. So we were successful in the first round of the Mayor's Young Londoners Fund. And Sadiq Khan put out this funding to help organisations decrease the level of violence in the city. So in London, any organisation working with young people were able to apply for this funding and we were successful. And we are funded for 3 years. So we will finish our funding in December 2021, so halfway through. And although we got our funding at the beginning of last year, beginning of January in 2019, we only started our patrols in May. So almost halfway through the year because we had to go through a load of recruitment. So get to know young advisors and our team together and training them up and going through all the checks with the council and then finally starting our patrols on the 27th of May. So it's a little bit about how Streetbase has been doing over the past year, I can say. So we have over 50 young people trained. So when I say young people, these are young people already engaged in the youth engagement team in the council. So these are young advisors, as well as youth independent advisory group members. So youth independent advisory group members, YIAG for short, are similar to the young advisors. However, these are young people with lived experiences. So they are often referred from the youth offending service and have experience with the criminal justice system. I suppose most would describe these young people as hard to reach, but we've proven they're not because they're quite engaged with us and are contributing really well to our team. So it is 100% youth-led. I'm 23 and I'm the coordinator of Streetbase. My manager who she just signs off everything else. However, everything else is done amongst the teams, amongst us 16 to 25-year-olds. And it's 16 to 25, as we know, that's the most responsible age to go out and about on the streets. So when we've put in our application for our Young Londoners Fund, we originally pledged to engage 300 young people and refer 200. But as you can see in the year, can't really call it a year because it started from January, but we started patrolling in May. We have almost tripled our targets. So we're very impressed by that. And I would say it was so successful because it's our young people going out and about on the streets, and we're all from Waltham Forest. So we know where young people hang about. We go to schools there or had gone to schools and colleges there. So we're familiar with some faces. We know the area really well. And we just have that really chilled, casual approach to young people that just makes them want to talk to us without having to convince them so much. So yes, we've attended quite a few locations. We are at most council meetings, whichever meetings regarding young people. We're at almost every community event. So whether that's just street parties or the big events that our Walthamstow Garden Party, we are there. Anywhere there's young people, we are there. And we also have been into schools, delivering assemblies, and going into schools during lunchtime to do a patrol. So just meeting the young people in schools and just finding out their interests and referring them on through there. Since we started, we have had many partnerships. This picture here shows our Youth Justice Board partnership. So the Youth Justice Board asked Streetbase to deliver a presentation on how we work, just showing best practice amongst young people. And this was out in Birmingham. But we've also worked quite closely with Waltham Forest Antisocial Behaviour Team. They're one of our partners. So if our antisocial behaviour team are out and about in Waltham Forest and they see a group of young people and can't really engage with them well, whether they're doing graffiti or whatever it may be, or they're hanging around in a certain area causing being a nuisance, then they'll ask us to come and engage with these young people and explain to them why they have to move on or why they can't have their dogs there, whatever it may be. And loads more. As we see here, Violence Reduction Partnership is Waltham Forest Council's Violence Reduction Partnership. And again, speaking about how we can reduce violence in our borough. So moving on, so how does it work? How does Streetbase work? So as I explained, we have our team of 16 to 25s. Normally before COVID, I would set a patrol. So when I say set a patrol, I would pick an area of our 4 boroughs. So Waltham Forest are made up of 4 individual boroughs: Leighton, Leytonstone, Walthamstow, Chingford. And inside those boroughs, there's different areas where young people chill and hang about. So I would set a patrol normally a week in advance with a time, and then I'll select a team of 4 individuals. So one would always be a lead. So our leads are over at the age of 18. They have safeguarding training and additional training like how to spot signs of child sexual exploitation, or it may be forced marriage, or just extra conflict management. These leads often have more experience of being a young advisor or a YIAG member. So yes, we often go out in teams of 4. I like to mix it up quite a bit. I like to have a mixture of genders. I like to have a mixture of races and experiences, because amongst our team, we have a wealth of training and skills. So we have youth mental health ambassadors in our team. We have those that are quite involved in the council's life chances program. So what the council's doing to improve life chances of young people. We have those who have LEAP conflict management training. We have quite a lot. So I like to mix up the skills a bit. So whenever, especially if I know a certain area needs more additional support in a certain sort of area, then I'll send more young people that have those type of skills. So we go out, it's a 3-hour patrol normally. So we walk around the area, let's say we walk around Walthamstow for 3 hours, and we engage with young people there. So we just speak casually. We normally have our forms and it just asks for basic details: name, age, contact details, whether it's email, their Instagram, or the number. Also their interest. That's the main thing we want, is their interest or their hopes for the future. So when we say interest, it can be football, like that guy in the picture there. It can be hair and beauty, it can be law, it can be IT, whatever it may be. But what we do with that, we take it back to our database and we type up their details, and then we refer them on. So any information, any opportunities, any job opportunities, whatever it may be, we get under basketball, hair and beauty, whatever interest it is, we then forward it on to them. So whatever contact details they have for us, we'll let them know about it. We normally like to do a follow-up within 2 weeks after engaging with a young person, just to see, for example, if they were interested in basketball and we sent them basketball sessions happening on a Saturday night, whatever it may be. We could see if they went there. If not, why did they not go? Is it in an area they could not attend? If so, then we'll search for other areas. Was it too expensive? If so, we often we contact those organisations. We have built quite good partnerships with community organisations. So, for example, one basketball organisation, if you're referred through Streetbase, instead of paying £6, you pay £1, and so on. So we like to link them in with something that will help them secure their future. So since COVID-19, we've had to change our patrols. At first, we was not patrolling as the restrictions was very tight about working outside. However, after there was new restrictions being released and there was easing of lockdown, we adapted our patrols. So now we don't patrol in big groups of 4. We patrol in groups of 2, maximum 3, but mostly 2. And we often have the leads would have PPE on them. So it will be masks, hand sanitizer, and gloves for the patrollers to use if they wish. not many people use the gloves, but the guy in the bottom left prefers a mask. And we do actually offer out when we engage with young people, and we see, for example, we engaged with like a group, 2 boys that were play fighting. They was not aware of the COVID-19 restrictions at all, didn't know what was going on. They just knew that it was a lockdown. So our role is not to enforce, it's only to engage and educate. Really, we're just there to inform them. So we can't tell them to stop play fighting, we can't tell them to go home. What we did instead was give them some of our PPE. So we gave them masks, we gave them gloves, any way possible to keep them safe. And we often do that during our COVID-19 patrols if the young people need them or request them. And instead of having our paper forms where we pass over the forms or pass the pens or whatever it may be, we now use SurveyMonkey. So we use our individual phones to pull up our forms, and use SurveyMonkey to get engaged with young people, again keeping to that 2-meter distancing. So I don't normally set a patrol as I used to do. I don't set a patrol a week in advance for 3 times a week like I used to before COVID-19. We only set a patrol when requested by a partner. So it can be anyone in the council, it can be an organisation that works with young people who see a group of young people hanging around in a certain area and need some engagement. That's when we set patrols. Since COVID-19, they have been coming in last minute, but my team is always up for engaging and speaking to our young people. And we've also made sure that we keep our knowledge of COVID-19 and restrictions up to date. So we're always keeping the recent information so that we can then inform the young people of what's happening, and really explain, because when we go out and speaking to the young people, they know COVID-19 is happening, they know there's a lockdown, but they're not really understanding why and what's the restrictions, what's the rules, what's happening. Especially when they're getting fined and not understanding why they're getting fined. So that we're there to really explain to them what's expected of them. Also, from changing our patrols, we have entered a new pathway through Streetbase. So our early help coordinator in Waltham Forest have forwarded on some referrals to us. So these referrals are often come from police officers and schools via MASH. And upon reading these referrals, our early help coordinator felt as though instead of putting them down a route of a social worker or whatever it may be, they thought these young people would benefit best from speaking to someone on a peer-to-peer level, so they can explain to them what risks are approaching them. So these aren't highly risky cases. These are quite mild cases. So a few of the cases are about young people selling drugs, using drugs underage, or joining gang culture. And we're just there to really speak to them, understand what it is that excites them about gang culture, why are they selling drugs, and talking to them from our experiences, as we do. Most of our team, our leads, do have lived experiences about how we found it, what were the outcomes for us, and what other avenues we were able to go down that was more positive. So these, to do referrals, we only have handed them out to our leads to originally had safeguarding training, but we also had extra adolescents at risk training via Zoom, which was very good, very insightful to have actually. And then with that, we've had 4 cases, 2 were very good, successful. They were quite more open and understanding to us speaking to them. So they were closed within 3 weeks. And in one of the cases, a social worker was actually happy to close the case and to let Streetbase continue engaging with them. And there was also the 4th case where the family didn't want any professional engagement intervention at all. However, when I spoke to the boy the first time, him and his mom was very happy to continue engaging with me. So, as mentioned there, since those cases have been very successful and continuing on in some of them, our early help coordinator, has continued to give us cases, which is very good. So that's just another way how Streetbase has adapted during COVID-19, and hopefully will continue after COVID-19 as well. As well as our Streetbase patrols and our referrals, we have also increased our online presence. So most young people that we engage with give us their Instagram, which shows loads of young people are constantly interacting on Instagram. So we have built up our Streetbase presence on the Instagram page using the story highlights, which is over here. And these are just, it's like different departments, shall I say, different sections where they can go and access opportunities or supports. And we get these opportunities and support sent to us basically on a daily basis from different organisations around Waltham Forest. Some are like government type opportunities and support, but it's a case anything that young people can access and they can just view it there. They don't need to tell us they need their access in it. They can literally just go on our website and on our Instagram, view it and just follow the instructions. We often put up links if it's about bursaries or whatever, maybe we often put up links so they can access it directly. We've also started a new series called Our 2020 Visions. You can see a couple of the pictures there. So these are our team members, Ida and Jess, and they've done interviews, shall we say, with other street members, and just speaking about the hopes for the future. What are their goals? How feedback in the
Hey guys, yeah, I'm just going to jump in because I think Katie is frozen. We're just going to try and contact her separately and see if we can get back connected with her. Steve, could you maybe give her a shout?
Jane might be able to kind of carry that on.
I can try and take over. I know Katie messaged me and said she was having problems with her internet.
Thanks, Jane.
But we need to get her to stop sharing her screen somehow so I can get the presentation up. Is that possible?
Okay. Yeah.
If somebody else starts sharing their screen, it will override.
Oh, will it? Okay, let me.
You try that, Jane, if you could.
Right.
We've still got plenty of time because Leigh didn't take the full allocation of 15 minutes, so we've still got 10 minutes before Diane's due to speak anyway. So take your time.
Let me just quickly try and get the presentation up then. Where's it gone? There it is. No, that's not it.
While Jane's doing that, can I just direct people to the little Padlet link that I've put on there so that we can gather kind of further views from colleagues as well. It'll come up on a separate screen to a Padlet thing that you can fill in. That'd be really helpful.
Sorry guys, I'm trying to find the...
It's okay, Jane, take your time.
Trying to get
Technology works when it works, and when it doesn't, it can be a bit challenging. Don't worry.
Oops. Right, that should work now. It's still not coming up.
Yeah, maybe. Steve, can you contact Katie?
I think I've got to close everything else on my computer to get it to come up. Sorry.
It looks like Katie has now come out of that screen.
She has.
So I think you can now maybe try and go back in for us.
Sorry. Right. Okay. So can people see that screen? Yeah.
Yeah, that's come up. Thank you, Jane.
Right. So sorry about this, guys. I know Katie was having issues with her internet. She was doing such a good job as well. I'm Katie's manager. I'd much prefer her to be doing it as the young lead for the Streetbase programme. I think she was just at this slide here. Let me start from this slide. which was about the online presence, one of the things that the Streetbase program has moved over to since COVID-19, and they've been doing some amazing work here. They've been pooling online resources and virtual resources that on their Instagram story. They've been highlighting some of the Streetbase young people, like doing mini interviews with them, and putting up some amazing videos that they've been making as well. And I wanted to go on to the next. This is actually a video. I'm going to see if this will work. Can you all hear me okay, so that the sound should be okay? Yeah, okay, let me play this.
As young people, to be able to help our communities, yes, we need the support of the government, but we also need the support of organizations and community groups. So this is not just our message to the government, this is also a message to organizations who have been less able to support those who depend on their help. We should never let fear prevent us from showing our humanity, from helping people. What we as members of Streetbase and Waltham Forest have been implementing is using our social media to not just tell people to stay safe and stay at home, but to address the issues that are going on in our community by creating an online support hub through our Instagram, where people can access information on food banks, job opportunities, educational provisions, mental health support, and more. We hope that this video not just helps you to acknowledge the struggles of young people, but to see that young people can lead and be a part of the change.
So that is just a little clip from the end of the last video that they put out on their Streetbase Instagram, which came out at the weekend, and it was actually something which was fed into government. So the Youth Justice oversight group, which has government ministers and lots of senior chiefs from across the UK, like the police chiefs, courts and criminal justice, DWP, NHS England, all sit on that oversight group, and they had a presentation which included these clips from our young people. And this is actually, I think this is the final slide now. It was just asking the Streetbase patrollers and the Streetbase team, what are the challenges about coming out of lockdown? So Katie came up with this with some consultation with some of her other Streetbase team members, and they were maintaining the online presence, which is as well as increasing the street presence, supporting the team and the young people we encounter with their mental health and well-being post-lockdown. So in our borough, we're very fortunate. We have a really good online resource called couth.com, which I think is accessible generally, but Waltham Forest Public Health have actually commissioned them to spend extra hours supporting young people with their mental health online. I think, I forget the age range, I think that's up to 25 as well. Really good resource. Young people can log into the website couth, KOOTH.com, and they get access to clinicians, and it's a really good resource. And the final point was encouraging the team and young people to stay positive and to continue to be proactive. That's the final page there. It's got my email and Katie's email. I did see a comment in the questions about sharing the PowerPoint, and that's fine. We can share that with you.
Thank you so much, Jane. And hopefully Katie can kind of get back on and be a part.
Messaged me and says she can't get back into the call. I don't know if someone can send her another invite.
Yes, Steve or David, could you send a new invite out to Katie so she can join us again, please? And thank you very much. That's brought us perfectly back on time as well. We've got a couple of minutes now before Diane was due to speak anyway. So Diane, are you ready to move on from that presentation? Are you good to go?
I am, yes.
Thank you so much, Jane and Katie. That's a really strong presentation and a really good project. Really shows good practice, and thank you for sharing that with us today. Diane, over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to try and share my screen as well, so just give me 1 minute. Ooh. Okay. So I'm Diane Higgins. I am from Rochdale Youth Service. We're a local authority youth service based in north of Manchester, in the borough of Rochdale. Obviously, the clue's in the name. So just in terms of the kind of service that we are, if for people that remember what local authority youth services used to look like, we still have some semblance of that, or we did have. We were an organisation that had 30 plus sessions a week with young people, and that was a mix of open access, outreach, detached, and a smaller percentage of targeted activities with young people. We're a team that's made up of approximately 40 youth workers, 12 of which are full-time staff, and then the rest is made up of a variety of sessional youth workers, either 6 or 9 hours, and we engage young people through teams of qualified youth workers that way. This is what we look like in February. So as you can see, the kind of pictures that you would have normally seen back in the day when you were allowed to touch people. We heavily based on group work, heavily based on outdoor activities, but also open access youth provision. And then, so from 20th of March was the kind of evening that we closed all our provision. It was done very quickly, but what we made the decision kind of initially that we would straight away move to detached work. Straight away, that was because obviously young people didn't get the information that we were closed. Normally, if you shut a centre, then you'd let young people know. So we knew that young people would still be turning up to youth centres expecting them to be open. So we moved straight away to 100% detached work. That then very quickly developed into working with different organisations. Our risk assessment was done again very quickly initially. So as in the previous presentation, we were working 2 metres apart. That's what all these pictures are of, the youth workers and their new, not walking down the street together, but walking down the street 6 foot behind each other. Teams of 2, no travelling in cars, all on foot. And that's kind of been how we've been able to work. I think our initial, I've mentioned that our initial reason for doing that was just to make sure that young people understood what's happening, but that then kind of moved on to more partnership work with other organisations across the borough. The youth service fits into children's services, so we were straight away given key worker status. We joined the multi-agency team called the Consequence Management Group, that's led by the police but involves community safety, licensing, the environment. Kind of different organisations have kind of joined this group as we've kind of gone along as different issues have arisen. Our involvement in that has always been about just ensuring that young people are remaining safe. We were, during the early days of lockdown, we acknowledged that there were going to be some young people who wouldn't be adhering to the staying in at home all the time, and we wanted to kind of maintain contact with the young people, mainly as like welfare checks, checking that they were okay, finding out why they weren't staying at home, and then potentially kind of developing work based around those issues. So that's been kind of where a lot of our kind of work was based in the initial time during lockdown. We based on kind of the traditional detached work, we also always do something that we call Operation Ramadan. So we had the month of Ramadan. Now traditionally what we do is we change the time of our sessions to meet the needs of young people. We'll work very late because we know that young people are going to be out later at night. We did the same again, just because we thought it might be that something that young people do. Again, that was part of a multi-agency approach in terms of making that young people were remaining safe. We found that they weren't coming out. which was really good. And generally that's been the response of young people, that they have kind of stuck to what they were meant to do. And that's, you know, it's been quite good to see that young people haven't been the ones that have been causing the problems in Rochdale. It's been more house parties and things like that from adults, not from young people. So we've been able to sit quite smugly in these multi-agency meetings and say, nope, it's not young people causing the problems. The other sort of way that we've used our traditional way of doing detached work is when we've been walking around the streets, we've started to build in house visits to some of the young people that we wanted to maintain contact with. That sort of then started to evolve into doing sessions with them in the front gardens. So we've been giving out welfare packs and activity packs for young people throughout the time. Some for young people to do activities and things on their own. But then we started to take packs and sessions to young people that we could do with them, either in their front garden or at the front of the house. I suppose the change for us has been how we've kind of targeted our detached work. We've just seen a spelling mistake on that. We really, and this has been a really positive of the whole situation, is the links that we've developed with children's social care. In terms of, you know, the kind of conversations that have happened, I think there was a real, in the beginning stages, sort of March, early April, people really changed how they worked, and people started to do things just because they needed to be done. A lot of the bureaucracy that we kind of experienced before tended to go away, and we were given that. So one example was that young people going missing from home. We've played a real part in trying to support the young people who have gone missing. There has been an increase in young people from care who were going missing. There's been a number of breakdowns in foster placements, and we've been quite key in kind of supporting that. The detached work for the missing from home has been because we while we're walking about, we would see young people who had been reported as missing. A lot of the young people we would already know, and that gave us kind of a good basis to have them conversations with them. In terms of the young people in care, what we've tended to do there in the link with children's social care is when foster families were tending to have issues and there was breakdown, we've offered a little bit of respite, and be that you know, just kind of going out for a walk for an hour just to kind of give the families a break and the young people a break from tensions that were in the house. All done with social distancing. That's been our kind of main mantra throughout this, that everything we do at a distance. The other thing that we started to use was that we were doing organised exercise time with young people. So initially, when we were only allowed to have an hour exercise a day, we decided that could be something that youth workers could work with young people to do. So we started going on short bike rides with 1 or 2 young people, taking young people for a walk around the local area. Again, just to, you know, kind of continue to build that relationship, and, you know, just kind of check that the young people were okay and make them see that they could still have that contact with us. We have maintained some small group work in youth centres. Small group work as in, you know, 1 or 2 young people. That's been linked mainly to the work that we were doing before around an alternative curriculum. So young people at risk of criminal exploitation and serious youth violence, who weren't staying at home but were getting themselves involved in kind of more issues. They were, you know, kind of taking more risks, getting involved in crime. And we took the decision that if we could have a couple of hours with them a week where they weren't doing that, it was of benefit. So we started to, with those young people, we started to invite them into our youth centres at you know, specific times. We've also had an online programme. We've got quite a heavy media presence across all the social media platforms. And I think the challenge for us has been trying to make that not a standalone programme. We want that to be linked with what we're doing face-to-face with young people. So if we've got challenges online, we will take that to young people's front doors and, you know, kind of let them know about what's going on social media, because I think we, and I'm sure everybody, acknowledge that there's a lot of young people that we know we weren't going to engage just via using online platforms, and generally those are the young people that we really wanted to be engaging with and that we knew would be struggling during this time. So we've kind of put the online program out there. We've reached a whole different, kind of group of young people. There's new young people that have kind of started to engage in what we're doing, and we're sure that that's going to be something that will continue in the future. I think the kind of interesting one that we're playing with a little bit at the moment is our Detached live session that we do every Friday night. We're not entirely sure where it's going or whether it'll be something that carries on. We definitely think that it's got potential in terms of ways that we might be able to use it in the future. But at the moment, I think it's just a little bit of an insight into how youth workers do detached work. So we're just kind of trying to promote that. We have a theme that we'll have discussions in. We use Instagram, and we kind of link between different teams that are out at the same time and just have conversations about what the youth workers have been doing. And I think it'll be interesting for us to see how that evolves in the future.
And just to give you a little 5-minute warning, you're coming up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
That's no problem. So the way that where we are now and where we're thinking about for the future is we're starting to kind of risk assess and think about realistically what activities we can be putting on for young people. We've not been doing planned activities that are about trying to encourage young people to get involved. It's been more about more responsive and more reactive to when we've found young people. But what we want to do is kind of go back to where we work more comfortably, which is going out with an intention. And so that's thinking about activities that we can do in parks and open spaces. I think the difficulty is, everything needs to be about encouraging social distancing, all the kind of thinking about infection control and things that we think, we'll be able to do that, It's just kind of double thinking everything and looking at what I suppose our offer is really. That is starting to think about, what will the summer look like? We are a youth service that would traditionally do a fantastic summer programme where we've got loads of exciting activities going on, and it's how we can kind of build that in now. I think the other exciting thing for us is the opportunity that this has given us, and that's in terms of if you think back on the 20th of March that all our youth centres closed. We don't know what young people are going to how they're going to be, how they're going to behave, how they're going to hang about on the streets. Will they want to be in the same places that they were? So we've got absolutely no intention of just, when we get kind of a message from the government that youth centres can open, we've not got any intention of just opening what we did. I suppose to some extent it's putting the theory of having a needs-based service that we can really do now. Everything's closed, and we'll continue to do detached work where we find young people. Them are the groups of young people that we work with that then will hopefully kind of build our new wave of open access youth provision, or not. It might be that they want to stay outside. We don't know, and I think that's the quite exciting situation that we're in. We're doing a lot of needs analysis and community profiling, and it's really nice to kind of have, I think, remembering kind of all the theory about doing this kind of thing, but it's actually needed now because we genuinely don't know what young people are going to do. And I think just to finish, so detached youth work has been seen as a great thing, and in the business talk as our unique selling point, and it's been valued. I think there's a lot of other organisations in Rochdale that worked with young people, but either are kind of afraid of moving away from being in a building and stuff. But I think as youth workers, because we already do it, it meant that it was very easy for us to just do more of it. And people have started to acknowledge that. In other professionals, youth workers obviously know that that's really good, but other professionals are seeing that they're quite amazed. I mean, it's not amazing for us, it's just the norm, but they're quite amazed that youth workers have been able to continue to work face to face with young people. And that's us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane. I just want to pick up on that kind of the last point, the sort of the stuff that you've done and the way that you've adapted, but then also coming back to the heart of the work, being detached and away from buildings is, for me right now, really important. I think there's definitely a spotlight coming back onto detached youth work and just really good youth practice. And I really appreciate you sharing what you've been getting up to in Rochdale. I think a combination with that and the presentation before, I think it really does show, you know, the field, how, you know, if you're not thinking about some of these things, this stuff can definitely be incorporated. You can stay face to face with the young people at a really challenging time. So thank you very much for that, Diane. Just before we go to Chris, I think Leigh has messaged me to say he's unfortunately got to step out and go into another meeting. So do you want to say anything before you go, Leigh, or just say goodbye?
It was just if there's any questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got maybe, what time have we said? So yeah, we're actually on time for Chris. Would it be okay if questions come into the Q&A section, that we feed that back to you? And obviously we'll keep recording so you can hear any questions that were kind of aimed at the MYA.
That's fine. Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Leigh. And we'll speak to you very soon. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to move us on now to Chris McIntosh from YPAC in Manchester. Are you ready to share some of your views from the streets in Manchester, Chris?
Yeah. So I'm, how is Chris? Chris McIntosh. I'm the youth work manager of a small youth and play organisation called YPAC, which works in Mars Platting and Harper Hay wards in Manchester. So we're quite small. We have a team of 10 workers. We deliver youth work, sort of youth clubs, play clubs, and detached work. As part of that, we've kind of helped young people set up social enterprises and done various other projects from that. So what I wanted to talk to you was kind of almost the process of what happened for us through this the kind of COVID lockdown. From the setup of what we were doing to kind of some of the dynamics of the situation as and how it changed. So probably similar to a lot of you pre-lockdown, as the COVID situation was happening, we decided to align ourselves with schools and kind of think that any work that we did would kind of work alongside schools. So as soon as this kind of school shutdown would happen, that our projects would end in that way. So we continued our provision until the 23rd of March. And at that point, within the parameters of the lockdown, we just thought we couldn't deliver the work that we were doing in that way. We didn't have a key worker status. We're a small charity. And on the basis of our work being on association, based around association, and association not being kind of allowed at that time, we realised that we couldn't really do anything. So as part of that, we needed to make some organisational changes. Some of our workers were furloughed, all of our clubs shut, and where there wasn't work or health concerns, we furloughed quite a few of our staff, leaving us with a team of 3, 2 of whom were quite seasoned detached workers, and another worker who did a lot of detached with us, but beyond that hadn't done much. On the 1st of April, Manchester City Council Youth Strategy Team put out a youth ask. So they asked the voluntary sector whether or not they could help with working with young people at this time, recognising that skills that youth workers possessed, that we possess in engaging young people. Yeah, hold on a second. So the youth basically asked us to engage young people because we had the skills necessary to do it. There's no youth service left in Manchester because it was disassociated, and all that was left was the voluntary sector to be able to engage these young people. I think their hope was that the voluntary sector would step in so that it wasn't left to the police to engage young people and create more of an issue. The youth ask had 3 key objectives. The first was to keep young people safe. The second was to engage them, so to prevent sort of criminalisation, ensuring young people were complying with all the social distancing stuff, engaging young people in supporting the community and engaging them with online activities to build resilience and skills for life, and also providing for basic needs. the offer was put out as a protective youth work, so it was described as something different from generic youth work. It was quite targeted, but it was very much about delivering a public health message. As part of working in this, it meant that we'd have key worker status and be recognised as such by other agencies, which also then would allow us to develop other work. As a team, we kind of sat down and thought, do we want to engage with this? It would be a bit of a shift for us, and we spent quite a lot of time robustly discussing what we could do and what we could contribute and where we could contribute. We realised that our detached work skills, because we've got a lot of experience. We've got Kenny Stenton, who's one of our detached workers, and myself, and between us, we've probably got over 40 years worth of detached work experience. We just thought we had the skills that we could go out and engage young people in this way. Yeah. One of the big conversations we then had was with the board. The board obviously highlighted the reality of COVID, which was that the bottom line of working and contracting the disease could be death for one of our workers, and that all of our work needed to be put within that context. Yeah. So pragmatically, we then sat there and looked at what we needed to do. We double checked the insurance, which was a strangely straightforward phone call where they just said, are you doing anything differently? We said no. They said fine. We drew up our guidelines for engagement. We used the NYA and Fed guidelines as a basis for the work, but we wanted to tweak them so it was kind of specific to us. We found that really helpful. We then discussed with workers who was happy to go out, because we needed to make sure that people were comfortable being out in the environment, because we didn't want anyone to be working or feeling forced to be out in what could be quite a risky environment. And then finally, once we'd done all that, we got the board approval. So yeah. In this all, we recognised that our role was based on engaging young people in one conversation around virus and lockdown, to engage and educate, and where we needed and where it was kind of seen we needed to address other safeguarding concerns. So some of the guidelines that we did, we looked at specifically a purpose of engagement. So this is what we wrote: was the purpose for engagement is to keep young people safe and to inform of the relevant support services. In the first case, to educate young people on coronavirus and encourage them to return home to reduce the spread of coronavirus. The second is, if home is not safe, to ensure young people are properly safeguarded. Workers should be engaging, encouraging young people to go home, helping them to engage with online activities and other services that meet their identified needs. Workers should not socialise or spend any time with young people in a non-purposeful manner. Actively organise to meet young people unless it is to deal with a safeguarding concern or feel the need to enforce anyone to go home. We looked at PPE. We advocated the use of PPE, though over our time we've actually changed that. At first we were like, masks and gloves should be worn, but actually within the first few sessions we realised that actually the gloves just made your hands super sweaty, and actually once some young person would inadvertently always touch you down or kind of try and shake your hand or touch you or something, that glove was rendered useless. So we ended up kind of binning the gloves and making sure that we just washed our hands as soon as we'd had a conversation or kind of a touch or anything like that. Because much as you want to keep the boundaries, young people are prone to breaking everything they possibly can. Yeah, the main reason for us having the PPE at the start was to reinforce the message, but we kind of realised at some point that there were other ways of us keeping safe in that way. Yeah, and Graham Tiffany says down there, hand sanitizer was the one. So we always went out with a bag with a mobile phone in, our key worker status letters, hand sanitizer, and some activities for young people. Other parts of our guidelines were with social distancing. We made sure that we always had the 2 metre rule. We used that as kind of our main protection for workers, making sure that there was 2 metres between all of us, which is a bit weird when you've got 3 workers walking around 2 metres apart in a random triangle. It's not a natural way to be when you're so used to walking around the street with people right next to you. It's always quite fun. And and also we always found that young people are not very, anyway, that's a reflection of later on. Yeah, our guidelines, we then had time spent with groups. We actually made it so that we restricted the amount of time we would spend with a group. We recognized that because of the way the key worker was set up, that actually we needed to time bound our interactions to make sure that we only had 20 minutes at most with a group. This could obviously change if there was a safeguarding issue. If a young person then presented that they needed help and it was a safeguarding thing, we would stay with them for as long as was needed to deal with that safeguarding concern. But other than that, it was kind of a 20-minute maximum interaction, and that was only if we were doing positive education with them. We then looked at the levels of engagement that we needed to treat the work as a new piece of work. Yeah, this was kind of around a reconnaissance. We kind of recognized that the landscape had shifted from what it was. So we're now actually looking at a completely different environment to what we had been working in, because the parameters of that environment had changed. So we kind of recognized that, and so we needed to treat it as a new piece of work, that young people are out in quite a different way, despite having relationships there. So with new contacts that we were going to make, we wanted to engage with caution around the facts, check people are okay and they were keeping safe. With established contacts, we had more robust conversations about why they were out, what they were doing, how they were doing, and reinforcing the stay-at-home message. And the change to, so this change to protective youth work meant that a change for us was now we had a specific message based on public health. We're now acting as a messenger of the state, which was quite a change for us as a charity, because we suddenly had this thing, and we were not, and as part 5 minutes, oh blimey, I'm gonna have to speed up. Yeah, so we're working then with it no longer as a model of working with young people towards a point at which we're both going to reach. We had a very specific thing. Okay, so negotiations with the city council. We then went back to the city council and made some negotiations, because obviously we were concerned about the levels of information sharing that might be asked for, having had some previous conversations around kind of some of the shootings in North Manchester, where the police and complex safeguarding wanted basically all of the information we had about every young person, and we had some quite concerns. So we had a bit of a robust conversation around that, but they said that they basically wanted brief understanding of what's going on, and that our feedback was all right as long as we were safeguarding young people. So we worked on that. In terms of our delivery, our session ranged from 2 to 3 hours. We were supposed to do 2 hours, but generally it lasted longer. We had 3 workers out, and it covered the entire patch rather than one small area. Yeah, and we just set out into one different estate and then just walked around, see who was around. In a few cases where we wanted to develop work, we knocked on at people's houses. Yeah, all of this kind of was also with a load of complementary work. So the key worker status meant we could also deliver some one-to-one support work, and also do some neat work. And then alongside that, we also did a load of online stuff, doing Instagram and providing equipment to young people in order to encourage them to stay inside. So the initial weeks were really quite quiet. It was only kind of the usual young people who were socializing out on the street who were out. It generally tended to be, when it was young people, it tended to be the younger young people who were smoking weed, who couldn't smoke weed at home, who were out and about. Everyone else was kind of in, and small friendship groups of 1 or 2, or large groups playing football. Yeah, a lot of the young people who were in 2s or 3s were justifying this through the fact they'd created this social bubble. They were just the mates they always chilled with. So what was the problem? We had quite a lot of conversations with them. It was quite easy in the first few weeks. We had quite a succinct message, which was along with the side a national narrative, and then the joyful message from Boris, which came out, which is completely unclear, left us in a point where the young people said, it's all right, it's on its way out, we're allowed to do what we want. So we suddenly saw a massive shift from very few people being out to everyone being out. It also happened to coincide with a beautiful bit of weather, which then meant that kind of we saw, rather than groups of 2 or 3, we'd see groups of like 10 to 14 around and about. For us, the message from Boris kind of created a real dilemma for us as to the vagueness of what our role that meant as a key worker. And for each session, we'd be coming back and saying, right, what's our new message? What is it on point? So straight after Boris, we were like, our main points are staying at home is best, meet with one other person, hand washing, social distancing. And each time we go out now, we're having to brief beforehand to make sure we know exactly what has been said within the week. Yeah. From our first set of work that we did with the young people, we found there were kind of 5 points at which the young people, or 5 points that the young people had towards COVID. First was fear. There was a group that was really fearful of COVID and they just weren't out, or if they were, then 1s or 2s with very specific tasks. There were groups who were just ignorant. They didn't kind of know what was going on. It was all kind of information secondhand. There was an ambivalent group who kind of didn't really see the concern, were out, knew a bit of the risks, but weren't actively worried about it. We had some young people who were actively distanced from it. So they were out, they knew the concerns, and they knew what the risks could be of COVID, but because it was happening over there, they weren't fussed about it for themselves. And then we had some other young people who thought they were invincible and weren't going to get anything. It was never going to affect them, and had all the kind of the bravado of youth. And we kind of tended to see, depending on where the young people were, the size of group would kind of fit that view. Yeah. 1 second.
Can you, if you've got some concluding bits that you want to say, Chris, that'd be really
yeah. So I think the reflections for us it was really positive to have a physical presence on the street. We'd kind of missed that, and we think that it's going to have a much more benefit later on. A lot of this stuff, even though it's around messaging, I think for us, we see the benefit post-COVID of that physical presence. For us, some of our problems were the limitation of the role that we had as key workers, that it was one message, and that also naturally with young people, there's always a piece of work that comes out of them. There's always something that they want to do that you can take hold of and run with them. And being in a role where you couldn't do that was quite limiting for workers, quite frustrating at points. Like Diane said, actually a lot of the issues about large groups being out, beyond young people, were adults. They were the main source of issues. Wherever there were large groups drinking, it was always adults. We back onto a load of very posh flats in Ancoats, which is kind of one of the coolest, richest areas in Manchester at the moment. And all of those young professionals were out chilling in Mars Platin, but it was the Mars Platin young people who were going to get blamed for that, because the 22 to 35-year-olds all looked young enough to be youth. And I think one of the biggest things I think we're thinking through in the last week or so is, how do we as workers engage with the social change that's happening? The Black Lives Matters and all the protests, actually as youth workers, we'd be engaging with young people in this. And how we engage with that is one of the big questions that we've got. How we go beyond, or how we engage with that. And there you go.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Chris. It's been really interesting for me to hear now not living in Manchester, but growing up and working most of my working career in Manchester, kind of what's been going on. And I think I really, appreciate everyone's input today from the panelists speaking. And I'm going to kind of pass over to Steve Walker from the Fed. And I think we're going to move into the next section, which is you know, an open field discussion. So if you guys are happy to be a part of that as an open conversation with the attendees that are present, and we can maybe start to unpick and have a wider conversation about some of the learning. So I'll hand over to Steve, and thank you very much everyone for being a part of this. Cheers.
Thanks, Chris. I think it's really valuable that from Leigh's contribution that says that from Monday we're going to start to get some different guidance, which is helpful. And then through Katie's kind of young advisors at Streetbase at Waltham Forest, in terms of their use of social media, I think that's really effective. Maybe a commonality across the field at the moment. It was really interesting when Diane spoke about key worker status, because in our last webinar, it was found that some colleagues out in practice had challenges in relation to getting that status. And so a local authority link, we did kind of have those discussions about engaging with the local hub or local authority for organisations that couldn't attain that status to carry on. And Chris kind of doubled up on that. What I really liked were the categories at the end, Chris, about you know, some of the young people were frightened, ignorant, ambivalent. I think that's really insightful. And it shows that the kind of recce or re-recce in detached youth work is vital as we move on. So the next kind of 20-25 minutes is planned really, so that what we can do is that gather further views from the streets. And so if there's something in relation to what colleagues have said already, or there's something pertinent to you that you think would develop the conversation further, if you can just very quickly put that in the chat, and then I'll invite people to unmute so that they can offer their contribution. And so if we're thinking about the now of detached youth work, perhaps the easing phase, or perhaps even the future of detached youth work, and if you've got a contribution, please just kind of make a comment in the chat and I'll draw people in so that they can unmute. So anybody want to get us going? I could keep talking for 25 minutes, but I don't want to.
I won't let you.
No,
I'm joking. Yeah. There you go.
Syed, do you want to unmute and give us your perspective, please? Syed, can you unmute your mic?
Yes, I think I did, yes.
Great.
Hello, afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, hi. Sorry, I can't see myself. Can you see me?
No, but everybody's locked into that view apart from the panelists. Syed. So if you can just give your overview, that'd be great.
That's fine, yeah. Thank you very much for giving us time, and then, you know, giving us chance to take part in the street-based youth work, and how we can, you know, go on in this situation. It was fantastic, you know, some few speakers, you know, who spoke to us before, and I had really good few ideas, you know, like how we can do in this situation as well. Maybe I will, because I'm from Nottingham, so I will talk to my manager and then see if we can do anything for, if we are already doing it, but because I'm not, because we are kind of, you know, club based. So we do sometimes street work, but we haven't done anything.
I think Syed dropped out. So anyone else? No. Oh, you're still there? Great.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Hi everyone. If you can see me.
We can see
right.
you.
Yes. Yeah. So did you hear what I said before?
Yeah, we got that far. Yeah.
Right. That's fine. So I am going to say to my managers and my colleague as well after the training, maybe tomorrow or day after, you know, how we can carry on. And then if we are doing anything, I will be really interested to do some good work, and some good work you have already done, and maybe we can do as well. Like you have distributing PPE kits, and then like bike riding and all these things. There's some good ideas I've had. So yes, thank you very much for giving me a chance.
You're welcome, absolutely welcome. Is there anybody else that would like to offer a contribution? I can see that there's some questions in the chat, which is good, but if anyone would like to take the screen. Any perspectives from the street? Julie, are you putting your hand up to speak? If you can just unmute yourself, that would be great. What about people's views on the use of social media whilst out on Detached Youth Work? I know that Diane in Rochdale, you live stream as you move, don't you?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, and I think I said in the presentation, it's a growing thing. We're not getting loads of views yet. And we think that
Mike, Diane, Mike, your mic.
Get it in front of my face. Oh, love these. Yeah, just I think it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. I think it would be nice to have young people maybe using that to maybe direct where youth workers should be.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to be one of them things that we keep playing with and just see where it goes.
Yeah, I watched it the other day and I thought that was really insightful because young people can then know where the team are. And I think if that was, developed so that it worked the other way around, that'd be perfect, wouldn't it? Mm. Yeah. Katie,
I think I might be unmuted now.
You are, Julie, thank you.
Yay. Thank you. I just wanted to say we've just at the point of doing some recce's now about restarting our detached youth work, but I know it's something that's used on the streets in some charities in other countries, and I'm looking into how we can use interactive theatre, particularly to look around issues around control and domestic violence and contextualised safeguarding.
Wow.
There's a couple of charities that already do short dramas to get people to really sort of grapple with the issues of coercive control. And I'm hoping to take those to where we're getting quite a few groups of young people spending a lot of time with nitrous oxide. Mm-hmm. So lots of adults around the place are wringing their hands at the amount of canisters being found. And I just think it's a great opportunity this summer to be taking some relevant issues and working with those in a outdoor setting in our youth work and facilitating discussions, keeping socially distant compliant.
And how has the process of the recce been, Julie?
That's been good. I think what well, we're going back to our trustees to say that we feel that certainly those of us, we've only got 2 paid members of staff, we're both part-time. The rest of our kind of group is volunteers, but we feel that there needs to be, we're only planning to work with the 2 of us who are employed at the moment. We're finding that there's a much broader social spectrum of kids hanging around, because a lot of the stuff that is paid for by the moneyed kids, because Sevenoaks is the area I'm in and it's quite privileged. So we've tended to work with a socio-economic group that is sort of a gulf away from those young people, but there's more of those young people on the street as well at the moment, and so or beginning to, and so particularly around the issues of violence within the home and coercive control, I just think it's a great opportunity, because those issues are certainly not unique to one particular socio-economic group, as is often portrayed. And I feel the same around mental health issues and particularly around eating disorders as well, actually.
Sure. So the issues are still prevalent, if not increased during COVID?
Definitely increased, yeah.
Right.
And that this whole, sort of in this part of the southeast, the pressure on kids for them to only be seen in work, to define their worth as either their academic ability or their financial wealth is the dominant culture. And actually, I think this summer is affording us a huge opportunity to help young people actually build a much more healthy basis to their worth and their purpose, even though I think it's an incredibly difficult time for them to have had their futures so wiped out temporarily.
Yeah, fabulous. I think Katie's got her hand up. Katie, do you want to jump in there and add or subtract to that as you, in relation to your practice?
Yeah, well, not entirely. Well, obviously, I agree with everything that Julie was saying, but I just wanted to first apologise. Oh, my video's not on. Sorry. I want to first apologise for the logging out through my internet was absolutely rubbish.
No problem.
But Jane finished off really well for me. But also in terms of ours, because before you was mentioning about our social media, and I just wanted to note before COVID-19, we did have Instagram, but we didn't pay much attention to it. It was just something that if a young person gives us an Instagram, we can just message them there. We didn't really build much of a profile. However, it's only since COVID-19 we was able to really build up our Instagram process. Good girl, Mila Rose. Our Instagram and start to engage with different organisations and young people there. So yeah, and also as well as Instagram, we actually use, I have a work phone and so does my manager, so we use WhatsApp to upload things on my WhatsApp status. So when I have young people number, then I upload things on my WhatsApp status, opportunities, whatever it may be, I can broadcast them there. We also recently started our Snapchat as young people on Snapchat as well, and similar to what Diana was doing, like streaming when they're out, we're able to, it's mainly for when we're at events. And we can just show that we're at events so young people know that this is going on, they can just join. And we also have our Twitter as well. So we are engaging with young people and organisations left, right and centre wherever possible on social media, and it seems to be doing well.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Can I ask about how you've managed and open to the field as well in terms of developing risk assessments?
So at the beginning of our street-based thing, we did have to do our risk assessments, and we basically just adapted it in line with the COVID-19 as well. So sticking to our teammated distancing is easier because we've reduced the amount of people that go out on patrol as well. And also we're able to develop it a lot more and assess it as we go out, because we can't always predict everything that's going to happen. So as we go out, we're able to add or subtract from the risk assessment and advising our team along the way as well.
Fabulous. But Chris, that's different for you, right? Because you said that young people were kind of breaching some of those rules. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, young people, it was a bit like motorway driving in that you'd leave space and the young person would jump straight into it.
Right.
That's the best way to describe how young people treat a 2 metre distance. And also you've got some young people who are so touch oriented that no matter how much space you got, they were straight kind of in. And yeah, some young people would really respect the 2 metres. But for us, we had the guideline that is 2 metres, so it was on us to move back. But there are just points at which young people just either surprise you, bamboozle you, or it just kind of happens, and then you're just like, okay, this is what we've got to do. There's more a kind of pragmatism at some points. Having hand sanitizer was the best thing, though, because as soon as you've done it, you can just wash your hands, and move on. So.
And was that part of the kit you were taking out anyway? Was it an addition?
Yeah, we made sure that we'd got hand sanitizer on. We did have spare gloves and bits like that. We've got one worker who will wear gloves and masks the entire session. For myself, I tend to just wash my hands when I need it. If we're going into, we don't tend to go into buildings or anything else, so we're just out and about. So as long as we've got the 2 metres, yeah, we've kind of said that's probably the best way to keep yourself safe anyway.
Brilliant. Brilliant, thank you. Katie, there was a question I think it was in the Q&A about working with the patrollers, working with over 25s.
Sorry, I completely missed that. What was the question that I didn't see?
There was a question relating the Q&A relating to kind of working with over 25s or 25s and over.
So yeah, so with our Streetbase, sorry, I've got 2-year-olds for attachment in the background. Come here, me, Rose. So with Streetbase team members, we are 16 to 25, and we tend to engage young people who are 13 to 25. However, it's not a thing where when we're speaking to a young person, we're like, how old are you? And if they're over 25 or under 13, we're like, no, can't engage with you. It usually comes through conversation. So working with them, if we still have opportunities that are linked, for example, if we meet a 26 or 27-year-old and they're still interested in going into architecture, whatever it may be, we have that opportunity, we're more than happy to forward that on. However, with our team members who are over the age of 25, because we're under the National Young Advisors Charity, their restrictions are workers up to the age of 25. So unfortunately, they do leave our team, but most of the time, by the time they reach 25, they've already engaged other employment. Some people do leave. I'm the only person, I know 2 other people that are 25 right now who are still part of the team, and I'm the only person right now I can think of that hasn't got another job outside of this role. So yeah, that's just tends to how it works, and everyone's aware of it. But it's not a thing where it's just blunt, cut off, you're 25, goodbye. We still do keep in touch with our young people, and if there's events or anything we need help with, we bring them in. We have had ex-Young Advisors and YIAG members come and speak to us about a project they're working on, an event they need our help with, or they just message Jane about things they're working on. So we still do keep that contact where they want it and where they need it. However, that is the restrictions that just keep going.
Sure. What about the dynamic, though, of like a young advisor working with someone that's older? That's really interesting.
Yeah, do you know what? It's really weird because you don't really notice age because all of our team members, all of our team members have had training. So everyone would have in Streetbase training, which is, again, the risk assessment. It's about safeguarding, all of that sort of training. And being a young advisor, you also have different type of training about how to present, work in a team, etc. So we're all on the similar level of understanding and maturity when it comes into this team. And it's quite a nice dynamic to have different members of all ages. And it doesn't really seem a thing where, because I'm older than you, get different responsibilities. It's about who's available, who has the relevant training and experience, who gets particular jobs and tasks. So it's not often based on age. I'm 23 and I've still got team members. So I'm the coordinator and I've got team members who are 25 and 24. And it's all about equal respect. So it doesn't really seem to be a huge factor in our team.
That's really interesting stuff around kind of generational work and community development work and alongside youth work that I think is open to a much longer discussion. That's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it works well. It really does.
Yeah.
I'll just interject something into that. It's one of the things that we found in Manchester when I was a part of a charity called the Men's Room in Manchester that worked with young men who had experience with the judicial system, the sex industry, the list goes on. We made a decision as a charity that we would actually extend. So we started off kind of saying 13 to 25, and then it kind of ended up being that we pushed it up to European to like 30, because there was such a gap in provision for support for those over 25 and up to the age of 30 years of age. And to work in the way that you're talking about, where it's about the sharing of expertise within the team, not so much about how old you are, it's about where that kind of structure fits and works best in those areas. Yeah. I think that kind of intergenerational stuff is really key. And I'm making a mental note of that, about maybe something about we can speak in future webinars, sure, because there's something else there about disproportionality of community and how people are worked with, and where you can and cannot work, and where the funding sits and where that will come. So I really appreciate that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Corey, did you have a question that you'd put in the Q&A that you can perhaps do by sharing, unmuting your audio? Perhaps we can get responses from people.
Hi guys, so I'm part of the talk shop. I work with Annie, who's part of the panel. So my main question was in regards to Katie with this Snapchat and how this works with young people. Are they accessing possible friend requests?
Sorry, so within my team, so I'm quite, I don't really like to dominate when it comes to my team. I'm quite happy for my team to take lead on certain things, whether their areas are strong. So we have a social media team. So these are leads. So again, these are ones that are over 18 and have all the necessary training. We have a WhatsApp group. So in our WhatsApp group, we speak about our Instagram and our Snapchat, about different content we're going to upload. And we have individuals to take responsibility of those social media. So Instagram, there's different individuals on different days to reply back, upload content, whatever it may be. However, Snapchat works differently, because with Snapchat, you can only have one person to access account at a time. So once someone else accesses it, it logs you out. So we only have one person taking lead on our Snapchat. And this person is a very confident individual. He's very well known in Waltham Forest, and is known for his positive music as well. And he knows really a lot about Snapchat. Unfortunately for myself, although I'm 23, I have no social media, so I know jack all about how social media works at the best of times. So when he's on his social media, he's often kind of gets the young people from his, because he's, as he's known, and we tend to get our Snapchats from those who give us their Snapchats, and then obviously our Snapchat gets shared amongst other young people as well. So we tend to accept most young people, as long as they understand what Streetbase is, an organisation. It's not a personal Snapchat for the individual leading it. It's literally our organisation Snapchat. So yeah, we do accept basically every young person, and that's how it is. Did I answer the question?
That's perfect. Thank you so much. It really, really helps. I'm going to kind of start to close down there, but I'm going to pass to Graham Tiffany, Vice Chair of the Fed, in relation to some information that he's got about next week. So, Graham, over to you.
Can you see me?
Yes.
I can't see you, no worries.
Sadly, yes.
Hi, guys. Just a quick shout out for the international webinar next week. Same time, same place next week, 2 till 4 on Wednesday the 17th. I'm really pleased to say that we're going to have contributions from all around the world, from Norway, from Australia, Austria, Israel, Ghana, Czech Republic, Belgium, and of course the United Kingdom. The emphasis again on sharing good practice in the context of working with the young people in relation to the pandemic. A little bit of homework for you. Please do read the 2-page international policy statement that the Fed has produced with colleagues from around the world. And I would mention, in response to a question in the chat about securing essential status at a local level at least, that people around the world have been using this statement to do precisely that. So we'll end our discussion next week on a topic that's emerged in this discussion, which is thinking about what we've learned from working in recent times, about demanding a good future, not just for the practice, but for young people also. So I look forward to speaking to you all and getting in contact with you all next week. Thank you very much.
Perfect. And the link's just been put there for the international webinar, which is in the chat. So if people want to grab that. I'm going to close down there to allow kind of the networking space to do its thing. Really want to thank our presenters from today, including Leigh, who's had to leave. But if there are questions for Leigh at the NYA,
Lee's back.
Oh, is he back? Oh, perhaps Leigh could field questions now.
Leigh kindly found a way back in a bit of extra time, so he's going to join us for a bit.
Just before questions for Leigh or anybody else in that network space take place, can I just say that you know, there's some useful information in the chat. The Padlet link, which is live, if people want to add to that, that'd be great. And so, yeah, open to just kind of network and chit chat, please. But thanks so much, Chris. Have you got some final thoughts?
I always have final thoughts, but I think it's important we kind of maybe just move into the networking space. I appreciate there's still 46 to 50 attendees kind of interested in maintaining the conversation. I think just for me, I'm just maybe say a few of the key points that I've written down. as I've been listening and been a part of this afternoon, I think guidance and key worker status keeps coming, and is a conversation that is key to what we're doing in the present. But then another thing that I wrote down is future thinking. I think what's been shared through the panelists today is really clear, creative, exciting ways of adapting and keeping detached youth work and youth work at the heart of how we engage our young people within community. I think it's been really key to me that relationship has been a really kind of powerful word sort of spoken in this, and to see young people at the heart of that decision making and young people actually out there being upskilled and working within the area that they come from. Something I spoke of at the beginning is that I learned detached youth work in the area I was born into, in Moss Side in Manchester, and I felt very connected to that community, and as I grew into that community I understood it because I was a part of it. So that kind of internal relationship at the moment that I think for a lot of us is feeling slightly fragmented because the work we're doing is quite different. It's also, for me, what I always come back to is that youth workers do really good work, and youth workers should be doing this work in a safe way. I think, again, that kind of guidance conversation, the fact that jointly with the MYA, detached youth work guidance will be released by the end of this week, and then Leigh obviously spoke earlier about the national guidance being released early next week. I think that is going to really help the field. But again, I think it's very apparent to me that we're in an ever-changing environment. So your voices, your knowledge, your expertise from the streets you're working in is key in how we move this thing forward, and that guidance needs to adapt from the best, from the good practice we're hearing today and the good practice I know you guys are doing all over the country. So yeah, for me, we're going to take a lot of the knowledge we've done today and have a think internally as the Fed and start to think about maybe future webinars, things we need to start to expand on. And for me, that's, I just want to say a massive thank you for finding the time and coming and being a part today, sharing the projects and the work you're doing through the panelists, but also everyone else that's been involved in the space. I'm going to wind myself down there and kind of put my mute on, but I think, we've got the next 20 minutes. We're going to aim to finish at about 4 o'clock.
I think Graham has a question, Chris.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
My question's to Leigh. In his endeavours to secure essential status for not just detached youth workers, but youth workers generally. And I wonder whether you think, Leigh, there's one of the things that inhibits securing this status is simply the fact that youth work is yet to be respected and given the status as an essential service generally, as statutory provision, and whether this discussion we're having about futures will need to really push much harder for youth work to be given that kind of statutory status nationally.
Sure. I think that's part of the story. I don't think it's the whole story. I think it's complicated through. There's an element for me where the psyche of local authority, this does not, I don't want to put this out blanketly, but directors of children's services, chief execs of local authorities some of those used to be youth workers, and they're not these days. They're almost exclusively social care. There are a few, there are 2 or 3 I think I know of directors of children's services who are youth work backgrounds, but you see Ofsted frameworks and things like that which don't really talk about youth work at all, or hadn't talked about youth work at all. The new Ofsted framework starts to talk about our sort of practice, and so that loss of awareness has eroded the sort of the response in terms of, say, take the COVID stuff, where Department for Education just think schools, they just think social care, they're not thinking the child in the broader sense. I think if you talk to DCMS colleagues, our minister, they're really clear that youth work is essential. Youth workers should be a much stronger footing. There was some work done around the statutory guidance here in England and the review of that. That really surprised the government because they had an overwhelming response that said they should strengthen the duty on local authorities, and invest in workforce for workers and professional standards, etc. And that almost gave them a bit of a problem, because you couldn't just fudge it and go, well, we'll just twiddle the edges around it and republish it. They've got to do something more fundamental. COVID's kind of stopped that work at the moment, but I talk to the civil servant every day, and I know that they are picking it up and getting it moving. Of the Youth Investment Fund, the government funding, they're looking at moving that through local authorities, or some of that's certainly going to flow into local authorities, and that will go alongside a new statutory guidance. Now, will that go through Parliament to make it a formal legal statutory service? Maybe, actually. I mean, it's one of the options on the table that the ministers are wrestling with, and they kind of want to do it, but I think COVID's just slowed all that down. So we are, if you've watched our reports and the things that we're pushing out, we're slowly just building the argument of why youth work should be very clearly a public statutory funded service, delivered by the voluntary sector, delivered by whoever's really good at doing it, but actually should have that core amount of public funding underpinning it around a set of quality standards, J&C, etc. And our work, I'm just doing it from the APPG report that we published last year, right the way through to the stuff that we're doing this year, is all about building the argument and the business case behind that, and that is winning through. So it's a slow burn. I'm not expecting any rapid answers, but it's getting there. We're definitely getting there. 3 select committees in the next few weeks are going to be talking about youth services by the look of it, and a range of other sort of public sector bodies are also looking at it. There is there's a lot more dialogue now between Department for Education, Number 10, DCMS, around the role of youth work in a range of disciplines, and that only helps to make the argument to put more investment in.
Leigh, can I just ask a follow-up question to that about what you think is the most significant thing that we've been learning during the context of COVID about the work that we do?
I think in terms of detached youth work, because it's, in one sense, because it's the only apart from online, it's the only sort of face-to-face element that's been allowed. And we collectively with the Fed, the NYA, went out right at the beginning and said detached youth work's fine, we'll back this. We've seen the National Police Chiefs Council create guidance for police forces. It says youth work's great, let's have it, let's make it. And we wrote that. I mean, we sat there and typed all that out with them, and all of that has sort of informed that debate. I think we've seen more detached youth work as part of this, and whilst people do want to get back into buildings and those spaces, particularly as winter kicks in more, I definitely think we'll see a larger prevalence of detached youth work practice than we saw before. And people may have also seen the Youth Endowment Fund put out funding, and one of their 3 strands was detached youth work. And again, NYA was we were advisors on how to do on that. So it's not it's a few million, it's not masses of money, but it's a good start. And I think that's the bit for me, that we won't go back to, there'll be more detached youth work than there was before, and I think we'll see that continue. I think we'll see more funding for youth work more generally in the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, I'm really sure, I'm growing in confidence around that. The flip side of that is we're fearful of losing up to 20-25% of the sector going under as part of the impact of COVID, and nobody should be blind to the recession or whatever that's going to follow. Now they're absolutely jumping up and down, going there'll be no further austerity. We know that we won't tolerate this, but how do you fund the 300 billion they've stacked in the bank and fund other services as well? And I do fear that youth work could continue to be squeezed in there, but the argument of 10 years ago when we had, 10, 12 years ago when we had youth services, you didn't see such prevalence of serious youth violence, of abuse and exploitation of young people, all these horrific things. And why not? And one of the answers is because we had youth services that supported those young people, who wrapped our arms around them in a professional sense, gave them a trusted adult to engage with on their terms, on their turf, where they choose to start rather than where the state chooses to start. And the world is recognising that methodology is vital, and I think we'll continue to build the case.
And perhaps some support to formal education from colleagues in informal education around learning outdoors and the like, maybe that way. Are there any other questions? We've got about 10 minutes left. So is there any questions from the field about today? Anything for Leigh particularly? I think we're in a space where we can just unmute now and ask questions, if that's okay.
We talk about formal education. Our next report, due out next Friday, is on the role of youth work in the formal education system.
Brilliant, thank you.
Go on, Graham. So I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by developments context of New York, and as Chris McIntosh so importantly mentions, Black Lives Matters, and discussion now about transference of funding from the police to youth and social services. A commitment has been made to do this in New York. A commitment has been made to do this in Minneapolis. Do you think there's ever going to be that kind of discussion in the United Kingdom? The idea that we take a different view of what constitutes public safety and the role of youth services within that?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it, in truth. I know there are more and more police and crime commissioners putting money into youth work. If you go to Northamptonshire, they're employing 12 JNC qualified, on JNC terms and conditions, youth workers working out and about, and they are not policing. They're really, really clear. And I've been out and seen it, and I've spoken to those colleagues. They are doing youth work on our terms as we would recognise it as a profession. And that just the PCC and the chief officer recognises that's a far more effective way of engaging and supporting young people rather than criminalising them up front. And there are other authorities, you know, London's been moving in this direction a little bit. I mean, the Met's a big beast, but, you know, we're seeing other, you know, other police forces or police and crime commissioners look at that. We've just had 2 today, literally coming in, West Midlands and another one, wanting a conversation around how to move, you know, put more resources into this stuff. And as long as it's done in the right way and in the right terms to professional standards, we would support it. If it was policing via youth workers, no thanks, not interested. But if it's genuinely engaging young people on their, where they choose to start, on their challenges, their needs, then you know, whoever wants to pay for it will support them in most cases. But we're starting to see that happen already, and we've been engaged by the Home Office 3 times in the last 6 months. So around child sexual exploitation, abuse, and a range of other topics. And I know that they're very interested in that. I mean, I think the Home Secretary probably wants a multi-100 million pound youth service nationally. I'm not sure that's on the right terms, so we're not necessarily throwing our weight behind that one yet, but we'll see. I saw Stuart's name pop up. Does Stuart want to talk?
Yeah, I'll let Stuart talk, and I'll mute.
You there, Stuart?
No, I don't. No, it wasn't me. Sorry. I can talk, but I hadn't got anything to say.
You're going to ask me a question. I used to work with you.
Well, I was going to ask you, Leigh. How's Boris?
I've no idea.
You're not engaging with him in conversation.
No, don't have his. I don't get in touch with him.
Oh no, no. Sorry, I don't know. Perhaps I pressed the raise hand button by mistake. I've been zooming for quite some weeks now, and I'm still not quite used to it. But yeah. So sorry, it wasn't me.
No worries, Stuart. I'm going to mute my mic as well, so the colleagues can just kind of get into their own discussion groups or raise points.
Something I was just going to add to some of that was some of the conversations I've been a part of for the last 2 weeks. Very much there feels like there's a palpable willingness not to go back to where we were before COVID, and I think that there is potentially an opportunity of bringing things that get spoken of and then kind of drop off agendas and kind of slip back to where they were, and it's kind of everything's all right. It really isn't. So I think, just seeing some of the stuff coming in the chat about climate change, Black Lives Matter, all of these things right now are really salient points that I think people are trying to find a way of pressing that home and really making some change, because I get tired of what the new normal is going to be, and I also get very cautious of the new normal for young people without young people's voices in that conversation. So I think part of what Detached Youth Work, the youth service, some of the conversations that I know we're having amongst the team and amongst kind of the network is what is some of that future thinking. You know, right now we're in the present and we're having to respond to a COVID-19 context. But, you know, touch wood, I'm hopeful that will not be the forever. And we're going to get back to a form of what we do. And I think that today it's been really apparent to me that there's some really strong ideas about how you adapt, use your time differently, how you work differently. But what's really key to me is people have talked for me about their patch, about their territory, about the areas they are in, and all of those voices are really relevant for that future conversation. Just wondering if anyone else has got anything that you just want to bring into the space. We're kind of coming into the last 5 minutes of the Zoom, and there's still about 36 of us hanging out. So just, you know, if anyone wants to bring anything from today, share what today's been like for them. If, you know, if they've learned, if they want to add anything, now's the time, guys.
No, just wanted to thank you, everyone, all the speakers, and everyone who has participated as well. I think everyone has got some ideas, and then they will, and I will urge them to kind of do the practice, the good practice from what you have just shared. Thank you.
I love these bits of digital meetings. It's almost like, how long can you sit staring at the screen without saying anything? I'm really bad at it, so I'm going to say something. I also, what I just concur with Saeed is saying, you know, a massive thank you. And these webinars continue to bring a sharing and a space for practitioners that are actually out doing the work, with or without status. People have a willingness to be working face to face with young people. As a charity, we're going to take a lot of this knowledge back in and have a chat and bring the most prominent points maybe to the fore. Graham's obviously promoted the fact that we're doing an international version of this next Wednesday. I will just reiterate the guidance for Detached Youth Work will go out on Friday, and then the MYA will be releasing next week the national guidance. We just need to keep moving forward and working together, and the Fed is committed to creating these spaces for, you know, practicing detached youth workers and youth workers to come together and have these conversations. So a massive thank you from myself and the Fed. Really appreciate your time, guys, and I really look forward to seeing you all again next time we come back together virtually, or who knows, face to face somewhere soon where I can give someone a hug. That's just my bag. I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
See you later.
Sorry, one more thing. I will request all the participants to donate the charity, the good work you are doing. I think we need to help you as well, and I'm hoping to send you some, you know, something for myself as well. And another thing I want to say, if you can send us some links as well, you know, like what I think you have recorded this whole session. So if you can send us some recordings as well, thank you.
We will. We'll make sure that goes live at some point once it's downloaded properly. We'll do that, Syed. Thank you. Just before people go, and I know people are starting to leave rapidly, please remember we've got the international webinar on Detached Youth Work next week on Wednesday. Link is on Eventbrite and it's been posted in the chat, and you can check the website for that information. If you keep an eye on the website, the Fed's going to offer over the next kind of couple of months some training events that are going to be kind of paper play training for individuals, and remembering that if you email info@fdYW.org.uk, you can contact around organisational training that we can offer. The resources link on the website and the blog is always filled with information relating to detached youth work, and we've also got links on there to Dynamo International for a broader perspective if people need those sorts of resources. There are now only 25 tickets left for next week's webinar, but again, it should be a good event, and so you should take those last places before too long.
Okay, guys. I'm going to ask Steve, who is in control of the Zoom as the host, to shut us down just finally. Yeah, again, thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Saeed.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
See you. How do you leave?